Criticisms trail the arrest and remand of former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore in Kuje prison, a move reminiscent of his 2019 ordeal in the hands of the DSS. The question now is, what's next? And as conflicting views abound among northern leaders on President Buhari's performance in critical areas of the polity, what are the key issues at stake in 2021? Bearing in mind what played out last year, well, that's our special for tonight. Hello and welcome. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Kayode Okikiolu, and by the way, it's raining here in Lagos, and I never thought I'd see it rain at this time of the year. But what do I know? It is a year after 2020, so maybe we should expect the unexpected. In the meantime, it's also the first work day in 2021, and the courts are not exempted. Well, earlier today, a chief magistrate court in Abuja ordered the remand of Mr. Omoyele Sowore and 4 others at the Kuje Correctional Center after the defendants pleaded not guilty to a 3-count charge of criminal conspiracy, unlawful assembly, and inciting public disturbance. The Chief Magistrate Mabel Shegun Bello, while ruling on an oral bail application of the defendants, ordered that they be allowed access to medical care and to a lawyer of their choice. The magistrate also ordered the lawyer to the defendants to file a formal bail application within 24 hours, as she adjourned hearing of the bail application till tomorrow, January the 5th. So we wait to see what comes out of this. But then, Mr. Sowore is not new to the courts or arrests. Well, that's right. This is not the first time, nor the second time security operatives have arrested him over protests, some dating as far back as the early 90s. But one you may remember well happened on August 3rd, 2019, when he was taken by the DSS ahead of a planned Revolution Now protest and eventually charged with conspiracy to commit treason. He was kept in detention despite several court rulings ordering his release. And 3 months and 28 days, that's how long he spent in detention before he was finally released on December the 24th of the same year, 2019. So this latest arrest comes exactly 1 year and 1 week after he was released, and so much criticism has followed it both on and off social media. Now, one of such criticisms is from the coalition of northern groups, as CNG, through its spokesperson, Abdulaziz Suleiman. Well, in a statement, the group described Showore's arrest alongside 4 of his friends during that candlelight procession to usher in the new year in Abuja as another sign of what they call brutal encroachment on people's fundamental rights that has become this administration's hallmark. Also, early on Friday, the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project at SERAP issued a 48-hour ultimatum for Showore's release, threatening to sue the government. Well, we'll touch on that tonight, especially because the group was voicing their grievances against the government, just like a lot of other Nigerians have done in recent times. Well, they have criticized the government's handling of the economy, security especially, and other actions of the president in particular. Well, the opinions may vary, but not the issues. So tonight on the program, we speak to the issues affecting the region where the president himself is from. That's the northern region. So let's get into it on the program tonight. And joining us to do just that, we have Mr. Abdulaziz Suleiman, who is a spokesperson of Coalition of Northern Groups. He joins us via Zoom from Kaduna. We're also expecting a chieftain of the APC to join us on the program. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Suleiman, on the program tonight.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Well, the CNG, let me begin with our lead story, because the CNG has likened the arrest of Mr. Sowore to totalitarian oppression and suppression of people's rights. Now, this is a view shared by a good number of Nigerians. So the question now is, how do you think the government should have handled this, especially because we saw the bad media that followed the 2019 arrests and detention? So what should the government have done in this instance?
You see, to attempt to stop someone from associating freely, from enjoying his right to freedom of association or freedom of movement, is totalitarian, as we have said. It's an attempt to suppress voices of dissent. You see, this government has grown increasingly intolerant of opposition, of criticism. I remember some times ago, the DSS had to invite former House of Representatives, Speaker Galina Abba, just because he voiced out his criticism. Now, you see, by arresting Sowore, whom we believe was just out to perform the ritual of the candlelight to usher in the new year, and they were just 4 in number, and I don't think there was any attempt to breach any law, any existing regulation. So it's just about impunity. It's about breaching human rights, people's fundamental human rights. There is no cause, there is no point. It's uncalled for. The arrest is totally uncalled for. That's what we believe.
But, you know, the interesting thing is, for some people, especially those who support the government, they say that this actually followed due process. They say it followed the rule of law. They say he was arrested, he was arraigned, and eventually remanded in prison. Do you think that's a fair analysis?
It's not, because arrested for what? You have to be, you can only be arrested when you commit an offense. And you have to establish an offense first before charging a person. And we're not aware that people have been, there is any statute that has lawfully barred people from coming together, 4 people coming together for the candlelight celebration. Even if there is, I think that's ultra bias.
Just quickly, let me ask you, because your group has consistently spoken against this government in areas you say that this government has not done well. So has your group faced such, have you been at the receiving end of such actions from the government?
Yeah, we have. There was a time when we protested in Katsina, a protest that was adjudged by even the Commissioner of Police of the state as the most peaceful. We had a procession from a square to the government house, where we were received by the Commissioner of Police. We protested the incessant killings, the untamed banditry going on in northern Nigeria, and it was Katsina was the epicenter at that time. We protested. We gave notice of our protest. We served the police headquarters in Abuja. We served the DSS headquarters in Abuja. We followed every due process, even though we were not obliged to seek permission before we staged a peaceful protest, but we went through all that trouble. But at the end, the police had to arrest our Board of Trustees chairman, Mr. Nashura Ashir Sarif. We had to exert maximum pressure before he was released unconditionally. So I can tell you that we have gone through that. And very recently, we were holding a meeting on the same issue of insecurity in Kaduna at the Arewa House. Thugs were mobilized to disrupt the meeting. They came in armed, about 200 of them, wielding dangerous weapons. Some of them were even sighted with firearms. And we believed it was state-sponsored, because we complained to the Commissioner of Police the following day. He said action will be taken, but up to this moment, there's no action taken. So we can precisely say we have been victims of such arbitrary actions of government.
Okay, Mr. Sulaiman, let's expand this conversation. Now we're joined by Mr. Sule Ikosami, who is an APC chieftain. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Good evening, and thank you for joining us on the program. Well, you sort of walked in on us, great to have you, discussing the arrest, the arraignment and remand of Mr. Sowore. And, you know, a lot of people remember what happened in 2019 when he was in custody for almost 4 months. We remember the bad media it generated for this government. We had lawmakers from the United States and, you know, people from other countries speaking against this because there were court orders ordering his release. So seeing how this has played out, a lot of Nigerians are asking, why go through this process again when we saw what happened in 2019? What's your response to that?
Very good evening, viewers. We have to understand one fact. There is no government since the inception of democracy that has elated democracy that the current government of President Muhammadu Buhari. I don't want to talk about the other issues of legalities that of other people that violated the law and they are facing the wrath of the law or they are in court. That's actually for court to actually decide and other people to, the legal, of course, representative of such cases for them to speak about. But it's in court, just like you said, some of the cases are in court. So we can't be having such conversation. But I can tell you, if you want to assess a democratic government, you assess them on 3 ways. First, on the way they conduct themselves in the course of electioneering. 2 is the way they go open when it comes to protest, rallies, and people are giving. And the third one is the way people are allowed to come to the media and express their views on good and the bad and mistakes of the government. Whichever government is born out, of course, should be able to make some mistake as well. So that's the way you'll be able to assess a democratic government. But I can tell you, government has been more democratic than the previous PDP, which of course we can, just the way the speaker said, that they are assuming that when they were harassed during their procession, possibly it could be self-sponsored. Who could also sit down at the background and say, some of them could actually be supported by the opposition party to actually come out and make some claims that are unfounded on major issues of governance in our country. So I totally disagree with that. This is a government that has been far more democratic than most government we've had since 1999. And that's my view on that, sir.
Well, is this government against protests? Because it comes across as that when a lot of people see gatherings of protests and eventual arrests. We saw what happened during the NSAS protests, and now this. So a lot of people are asking, really, what is this government with government and protests?
This government is certainly not against protest. This government has been pro any political activity, any human right has not been an anchor that could actually be violated by this government. That's very clear because from day one, this government has allowed active political participation of the opposition. Their views have been clearly. This is the first time that a democratic president elected under this democracy could allow a very transparent electoral processes all around the country. Even areas we were actually assuming to have won elections, we took it, and we didn't have any issues with that in several other places that were very dominant in our popularity. So clearly, the issue of this government not accepting protests or otherwise are actually unfounded. Of course, you know, in the course of protests, other people engage in other illegal activity of destruction of government property and people's property. And the essence of the law is to protect the people and their properties. And the law officers on the ground will not sit down and allow such thing to continue to happen. They will have to protect. And at every time you think you have a right, if you try to infringe any other person's right, you're actually violating that other person's right. You cannot be said to be expressing your free right when you're actually violating others.
Well, Mr. Ekesami, let me try to put this in.
You know,
Pardon me, let me try to put this in because I referred to the NSAS protests, and I'm sure you followed the whole proceedings, how peaceful protesters were arrested. There's still videos on social media. In fact, one of the demands of the protesters was release of the protesters that were arrested unfairly. So clearly this points to an act that should never have happened.
You see, in the course of activity of the law enforcement agencies, sometimes information could actually be miscarried. And of course, they make those corrections in the event that some arrest, intelligence could actually come, and by the time some arrests are made, after some clarification, they are released. But it's normal, they will have to protect you and I. I can tell you that a very popular station like yours in Lagos was destroyed. Clearly, a media house was destroyed in the course of all this campaign and protest. People selling farm produce in markets, their foods were destroyed. So you could see there are some elements among the protesters that actually derailed and they went and doing the other things. It's actually a very good move of demonstrating to Nigerians some of the excesses in some of our police forces. But those excesses, Mr. President came out and highlighted some of those errors, and he even gave assurance on all these issues to be handled by states. And several inquiries were set, investigation is still ongoing, several reforms is currently ongoing, reviews were done on police and several other things. So every person that participated and the onlookers should be able to sit down and say that this government is taking a very bold step in addressing most of these issues. Okay. And we should be very proud to support Mr. President in saying that for the first time,
Mr. Ekosami.
Protesters came out, they ran on the street, doing so many things. And Mr. President came out and said all these issues that I am addressing A, B, and C.
We're due for a break
came
now,
out and
Mr.
gave their support to the president's views and said that we'll follow up to ensure these things are done. Governors came to...
If you can hear me, Mr. Ekosami, we're due. In fact, we're overdue for a break. And we need to go now for a break. But I think you brought up another thing. I was talking about the peaceful protests and people who were arrested while carrying out peaceful protests, not the violence that trailed it. But you know what? We need to go to break, gentlemen. And when we return, we'll take a look at the Northern Agenda, the CNG, the opinion and analysis of this government's performance. And we'll also hear from Mr. Ekosami on the perspectives of his party and the government. So please join us again. So welcome back to the program. We still have with us Mr. Abdulaziz Suleiman, the spokesperson, Coalition of Northern Groups, CNG. He joins us via Zoom from Kaduna State. And from Abuja, Mr. Sule Ikosami, an APC chieftain, also joins us on the program. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. So let's talk about the Northern Agenda. And over time, especially a good part of last year, when you talk about the Northern region, some of the issues that will come up for you is security, the economy, but mainly security from the Northeast and other states in the Northern region. So, Mr. Suleiman, we had a conversation with the president's spokesperson yesterday, and for him, the security situation now is better than pre-2015. In fact, the president in his New Year speech asked Nigerians to carefully recall the circumstances of his coming to office. Says the facts on the ground and the resources at the disposal of this government since 2015, and then weighed side by side the accomplishment of this administration. So from where you sit, things better off now compared to this administration?
No, not really, because you see, we have all along said that this government is fond of flouting victory in the face of a glaring failure. Before the government came into being, that was around 2015, we only had the issue of insurgency in the Northeast, the Boko Haram insurgency, and a few places where roadblocks were mounted by the military to avoid escalation. But within just 1 year of its coming into being, if we are to be honest to ourselves, this insecurity deteriorated, took a new dimension where we have incessant kidnappings, incessant banditry, killings of whatever sorts, all across the North Central and Northwest, which were relatively peaceful before the government came in. So for them to be using the yardstick of the Boko Haram alone to flout success is misrepresentation of facts. Even in the Northeast, they have been saying that Boko Haram has been decimated, but the reality on ground disproves that. There is no way an army, which they call a ragtag army, which has been decimated according to them, could have the capacity to launch successful attacks on military formations, on communities. I think the only thing that they can boast of is that Boko Haram has ceded the territories it once occupied in the Northeast. But they are still capable of inflicting harm on military formations and on the governor's convoy for about 3 occasions. And I think for the governor of Borno State to ask for mercenaries speaks a lot about what the government is saying. And very recently, he has had to get hunters to assist the military. So I think we have to tell ourselves the truth. The security situation now is worse than Buhari made it.
Mr. Ekosami, do you hold Mr. Suleiman's submissions, and by extension, the submissions of a lot of other northern elders as valid?
I totally, first and foremost, I want to be able to clear a notion. President Muhammadu Buhari has a Nigeria's agenda, not a northern agenda. He has a duty to protect the entire integrity and the territory of this very country. And if you want to make an assessment if you want to make an assessment of what Mr. President met in 2015, it's very quite simple. You just need to look at an analogy of a state that was totally taken over by Boko Haram. Successes are recorded. You also have to go and assess the kind of investment that Mr. President is making in the military infrastructure, and also look at what he's also investing in the infrastructure of the entire country as a whole. Also what he's doing to fight the very demon that we try to look at that promote most of these things, which is poverty, what Mr. President is doing. And if you make an assessment from just 2013 to 2015 and compare it to the period between 2015 to now, it's very simple for you to get the statistic. It's open there, you'll be able to see it. But I can tell you that while we're not looking at excuses, we're also looking at two things. One, we're also trying to reassess, keep on assessing the performance of our military on a daily basis. You and I might not have the preview of some information. Mr. President might have. But I can tell you, whoever has sacrificed his life, just like the leader we have today, it's very simple for you to know that he has a Nigeria at heart. He has a duty, he has a discretion under the Constitution on how he manages a decision on selection and removal of people that are commanding our defense. So it is very clear for you to just make an assessment of what was happening to the integrity, the entirety of Nigeria before 2015 and now.
Well, Mr. Ekosami,
and you have to understand that the reason why these governors require multinational cooperation is because
let me quickly get clarification, Mr.
Ekosami. This terrorism surrounding our whole African country, and people are invading from other African countries.
I need you to clear this for me, Mr. Ekosami, just a moment.
Require multinational forces of several other countries for them to be able to support the fight.
Just a moment, Mr. Ekosami.
The whole armed forces is actually
when Mr. Suleiman spoke,
in Nigeria.
If you can hear me, Mr. Ekosami, just help me clear this. When Mr. Suleiman spoke, he talked about some issues. He pointed to some specific issues. So when you say the statistics are there regarding the performance of this government, can you furnish us with these statistics when you say that it was better then than now?
2015, yes, I'll give you statistic. 2015, over 40 local governments were under the control of Boko Haram. When we took over power in 2015, within a very short period of time, Mr. President directly, the whole military chiefs, to be in the north is within a very short time, those whole territories were taken over. Remember, 70 to 80% of the attacks you are seeing right now are non-conventional. People come to people's homes, attack them, and disappear. People go to schools, kidnap, and disappear in areas that we have vulnerable
Mr.
people.
Ekosami, I think that's even worrisome that they will disappear. I think it's even worrisome that they will disappear, as though they were some cosmic entity. I mean, they shouldn't disappear. They're not cosmic, are they?
No, see. When we're talking about non-conventional, these are people that live within us.
Right.
And our intelligence gathering has always alerted us in the event those things happen. And there is always action and reaction on these issues, and some of these recoveries are done almost immediately. The fight, there is always a counter within the time. So I am telling you, it's non-conventional because most of the people live on our farmlands, in our markets.
Well, gentlemen.
So it's not a normal conventional war you have where people come and attack. No, it's totally different.
Well, gentlemen, we're coasting home now on the program.
Recorded that is how you can assess that based on that statistic.
Right, we're coasting home now. Clearly, this is an ongoing conversation.
And most of the areas totally dominated by Boko Haram in the past.
Okay, so let me just quickly get your views, gentlemen, on this in 30 seconds, if you may. And let me begin with Mr. Suleiman. So we're in 2021, and we have 12 months ahead of us. What are the options available for CNG?
I think, it's going to be what we call something like a carry forward. Because the solutions have not been provided the government has not provided any solution to the problems that were faced in 2020, so we are carrying them forward. As far as we are concerned, we have come over to 2021 with the same burden. So the CNG would continue pursuing its line of action. You see, in the past, about 2-3 months ago, there was this frenzy about sacking the service chiefs, that may be a solution. But we at the CNG have come to realize that it's no longer about their performance, whether they have performed creditably or not. It's now about legality. It's about procedure. What we are saying now is that these people have overstayed their tenure as per the scheme of service obtainable in the country.
Well,
And
Mr. Suleiman,
it up. Yes.
you have opened another vista of conversation, and clearly this is not over. So, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you so much for your time on the program tonight. Mr. Abdulaziz Suleiman, spokesperson of a coalition of northern groups, as well as Mr. Sule Ikosami, an APC chieftain. I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And by the way, Happy New Year to you. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Compliment of the season. Happy New Year, show.
Well, that's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kayode Pikilu. Good night.